We'll see. All right. Well, welcome everybody. There's some familiar faces here, and then of course there's some of you that might be your first time joining. This is this class, if you're someone who maybe has some experience, like you're probably going to hear some redundancies. Hopefully you'll hear some creative things that you can put in your tool belt. But regardless, this is primarily just kind of for people to hopefully be encouraged to consider doing this. And I always remind everybody, like, it's simple, but it's not easy, right? So I always use this as an example that we all know what it takes to get six packs and be millionaires, but very few of us have the discipline to actually do this step by step to take it. So hopefully this is going to motivate you to get on that path. So we're going to dive in and take a look at what we got going on here. Let me move my screen around so I can see. All right, so we're looking at the BRRRR strategy today. So for those of you who may, just to recap, BRRRR, BRRRR stands for buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat, and it's in that order. This is a method that I have used over the last 3.5 years. We closed this month on, I think, what'll be my 25th rental. And we've done that in about 3.5 years. Really, most of that has been done in the last 2.5 years. I got really serious in 2020. Well, really, I guess the last 2 years. So really serious in 2020. I bought 10 properties in 2020. I bought 10 in 2021. And so far this year, we'll have bought about 5 or 6 after we close on this one this month. So that's kind of my goal, is to try to buy 5 to 10 good cash flowing properties every year. If any of you were on the first call, you'll remember when I went through various strategies versus flipping, right? So I have some good friends, and I was just talking with Dave and Caitlin, right? So we have mutual friends who are killing it flipping houses in Savannah, and I'm always trying to get on to him about, hey, you need to stop selling these things. You need to keep them, because that's where true wealth is built. You build wealth with equity, not with transactions. So this is the strategy that I use, and basically I call it the free house strategy. That's the goal, like that you can get free houses. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes you have to leave some money in the deal. But a home run BRRRR, it means you don't leave any money in the deal. So we're going to just go through this. I'm going to kind of interweave a house that I just bought Friday into this whole strategy. I'm going to use that as kind of a real world example of my plan. I just closed on it Friday, so I just bought it, but I'm going to talk about how I got it, how I negotiated it, and then we'll talk about the whole process of what I look for as far as like finding creative things that I can do. Because the goal of this BRRRR strategy is that you are buying something at a certain value, and you are going to value add it. You're going to add value to the property because you want to raise the appraisal value. And so once you get the appraisal value up, you can refinance your money out and then repeat again. So we'll go through all that in detail. All right, so the first step is to buy. You have to find a deal. So this is this is the most important part of this whole process. And by the way, if you have questions throughout this, just unmute yourself, press the space bar, hold the space bar down, and ask, interrupt me. I want it to be kind of informal as I'm kind of teaching through this. So, but you have to find a deal. And, there's kind of 2 parts. I always say there's finding and there's funding. But if you find a good deal, you can always find everything else. So it really starts with finding a good deal. Now, Josh, what is a deal? I don't even know what a deal is. And part of the process of getting acclimated to all this is you're going to have to start analyzing deals. You're going to have to start running numbers. We've talked about a little bit of that on a previous call, but you have to get into a way where you can spot a good deal when it comes in front of you. But you also have me as a resource. You have other people. I had a call. I don't know if Devin's on this call, but I had a good friend of mine call me this week, and he said, man, I think I have a good deal. and he ran through everything with me. And so like you have people you can lean on. So if you come across something, if it's off market, especially, then, you know, reach out to me. I'll help you decide if it's a good deal. I'm not going to take it from you. I'll 100% help you with it. So, but there's really two ways that I tell people, you know, the main things to finding a deal, and that's using your time and marketing or marketing. So, so what I mean by that is, marketing's pretty plain, right? Like we can go out, we can write letters to homeowners. We can, when we're driving around, we see a house that's fallen apart, that is ripe for renovating. We can write that owner a letter. We can get online, and I'll share some tools in a little bit, some of the websites. In the United States of America, property ownership is all public knowledge. So you can find that information out, even if it's owned by an LLC or some sort of partnership, or, you know, some sort of company or corporation. Like you can still find out some contact information. So so that's where I would say, you know, if you're spending your time, you can be writing letters, like that's free. It costs a 55-cent stamp, right? Or whatever stamps cost these days. You can also skip trace. You can find their phone numbers. You can call them. Like this is your time invested to try to find deals. Now that's an active approach, right? I would say another method of doing this, and as you get momentum, it becomes a little easier. But for me, a lot of deals come to me. I have people that will call me, and partly is because they see me doing these things. Like when I post this stuff on Facebook or on my Instagram, a lot of that's just really intentional, because I want people to think of me if they think of someone who has a house that's in terrible shape. I want to be the person that comes to mind for that. But in the beginning, obviously you're not going to have that, but you do have a sphere. All of you have a network, and you need to make sure you're telling people. If you were in a place right now where you say, I want to buy a house and do this BRRRR strategy, then you need to get on Facebook. You need to tell people, hey, if you know someone who has a house that's falling apart, or someone that has a house that needs a lot of work, tell them, give my contact information to them. I want to consider buying it. You can just say something like, hey, me and my husband, or me and my wife, we're looking for a property to fix up so we can live in. Whatever it is, like you've got to tell people you're doing it. And that can feel weird in the beginning, but it really is the most powerful part of marketing for yourself. The second part is actual marketing. Like there are resources. If you've got money and you don't want to spend your time driving around looking for deals, there are ways to do this. And if you get on biggerpockets.com, if there's tons of things you can do to, you know, there's driving for dollars apps, there's prop stream, I think is what it's called, where you can actually pull lists of properties. You can pull lists based on equity that an owner has in it, or, you know, you can pull a list based on the property address is different than the owner's mailing address, which says they probably do not live there. It might be a rental property. And so then when you start digging in more, you know, you can be sending marketing mailers out and different things like that. You can be just pulling lists and getting their information and calling them. So I know that sounds like a lot of work, but that, you know, this, you don't get free houses without putting in some work, right? So like, this is the steps to do it. But, you know, that's basically the most important part of this process. So once you find a deal, and I know I'm kind of glossing over that, there's a lot there. Like we probably could spend a whole, you know, hour on just finding deals. But, you know, the biggest question you're probably going to have in your head, it's like, okay, well, I don't know if it's a deal. I've got this house. You might still have a lot of questions. And so the most important thing I tell people is that you want to control property. It's not always the most important thing to own property. Control is actually more important. It says my internet connection's unstable. Is everyone having any issues hearing me? We good?
You're good.
You're good? Okay. So controlling property means you want to have a contract on it. You want to have the ability to decide what you want to do. And so I always tell people the most important thing is to get it under contract. Again, there's you probably have a lot of questions there, but that's where I can help you with that, right? If you feel like you got a deal and you're like, hey, this is a deal, you call me, like, we'll get it under contract. We'll make sure we write you a contract. And with that is going to be a due diligence period. So this is where you can really validate, is this really a good deal? And this isn't that we want to drag sellers along and make them think we're going to buy their house and we don't, but if you have question marks around this, like, it's okay. And this is your time to decide. And so what a due diligence period is as a real estate agent, I'll give you the formal, what it is it's basically an option. It's an option to buy this real estate, and you can back out of that option for any reason without penalty. It can be anywhere from 7 days to 30 days. It can be more. I mean, but typically you're probably going to have about 2 weeks. If it's an off-market situation, you can of course write that longer. But with that is usually going to come some sort of form of earnest money put up. But again, as long as you back out within that due diligence period, you can get that earnest money back, and you have no. Hold on one second. My 3-year-old just came in. Baby, got to go back downstairs. Okay, but you got to go back downstairs. Oh. Mommy is failing right now.
Hey, Josh, I got a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I find a lot of difficulty in the finding a deal part,
Okay.
even as a real estate agent, right? Because my husband and I have been looking at buying rental property for a few years now. And especially recently, it's been where you can only, like if you're buying a property, the mortgage amount, unless you're putting a significant amount of money down, the mortgage cost monthly is going to be like very close to the rental market value. Do you have like a criteria you use when you try to figure out which houses you buy as to like what the percentage of the mortgage versus the rent possibility is for you to deem it a deal?
Yeah. So the deal we're going to look at today, we're going to look at that because I am looking for specific things. I'm looking for some creative opportunities because we want it to cash flow, right? Like, and so we're going to look at that as we get to the renovation side, or even just in a second, we're going to look at that. But
awesome. Thank you.
So for example, like as an agent, Amanda's an agent. There's a couple of agents on the call today, but Amanda's an agent. So, something like the MLS, like it is really going to be almost impossible to find a good deal right now on the MLS.
Yeah, that's what I'm experiencing.
Yeah. Now, sometimes I can, like I bought a house last year on the MLS that was on the market for quite some time. And it's probably one of the best deals I've ever bought. And I'll talk about that in a minute on that particular deal, but there's certain things I'm looking for, because on this added value side, I'm not just adding value for the ARV. I want to add value that I can up the rent as well. So let's look at that. So as we're looking at during the due diligence period, here are some of the things. Here are some of the things that we want to consider during the due diligence period. We want to make sure they're ironclad. Okay. So number one, we want to know what that ARV is. So if I am buying, and I'm going to use this property I closed on Friday. I bought it for $225,000. Okay. So I want to know what that ARV is going to be. Now, this was a pretty unique property, so I really wasn't sure what that was going to be. And just for everyone, ARV stands for after renovated value. So after I renovate this property, what's the value going to be? This property in particular, I'm paying $225,000 for it. Honestly, like without doing some value add to it, it really wasn't that great of a deal. The main house would probably rent for like $1,650 to $1,700. And so a $225,000 purchase, $1,650 to $1,700 rent, like we're not even hitting the 1% rule. But this ends up being a really good deal as we look into it. And so, but you want to know where that ARV is. And here's a little bit of a safeguard around that, because this whole thing, if that ARV number doesn't get hit, if that appraisal at the end of it doesn't come in where you want it to be, like that can be detrimental to you. So one of the things I love is using a local construction company bank, or even a hard money bank lender, because they will typically do what's called a subject to appraisal. So they're going to appraise that property today. You're going to give them the whole scope of work. You're going to give them schematics, drawings, everything you're going to do. And then they're going to take that and they're going to assume it's all done and give you an appraisal number. So you're going to know before you ever actually close on the property what that appraisal is going to be. And it's for anyone who's new, but even for us seasoned people, like it's really good to have that, because it takes the guesswork out of it. Sometimes it comes in way higher than we expect. Sometimes it doesn't come in high enough. And as an agent, I know, I'm like, no, this house is going to sell for more than that. I know I can get a higher appraisal than that. But if it's high enough and good enough for me to continue on, then I'm good. The second thing you want to know during this due diligence process is your reno costs. You know, I'm going to use Dave and Caitlin as an example. I sent them a house to consider. We were thinking about maybe wholesaling it to them. And they said, hey, well, can we get our contractor in? You know, they're not under contract yet or anything like that, but they're doing their due diligence. They're checking. And so they did. They got their contractor in, and I'm sure he gave them a number of, you know, range of where they needed to be. So they feel good about that. So you want to the contractor is your friend in this scenario, and we'll get there when we get on the renovation side. But you know, I shouldn't say it's free. You want to build a relationship with contractors. Like, good contractors aren't just going to show up at properties. But as you network and build these relationships, or if you get a property and you're under contract, you call me, say, hey, Josh, I've got this property, you know, that's why I'm doing this. I want to be a resource to you. And we can get you some pretty close numbers as far as your reno. And then you rent them out. Like, if your plan is to keep it as a BRRRR, and that's what we're talking about today, you want to feel pretty confident about what your rent amount is at the end. There's various tools you can use for that. I mean, just getting on Zillow and looking, there's a website called Rentometer. You know, I don't know how accurate it is, but if you get on Zillow and just start searching and pretend you're someone who's looking for a rental, you can start getting a really good picture of what the rental market's doing. And thankfully, we don't have any kind of government agencies in place with rent controls and things like that. So it's still very much a supply and demand, price-driven structure. So you can get a good idea from there. And then lastly, you want to kind of know where your refinance plan is. Typically, we're going to talk about this. You're going to have to wait a seasoning period of 6 months before you can refinance, but you need to already know when you're purchasing that property, like talk to a lender, know what are rates looking like? How are they trending? Are they trending up? Right now, they look like they're trending up. And again, that's something you want to account for. Like, I want to assume the worst. If it ends up coming in under that, that's great, but I'm assuming the worst. And as rates continue to climb, it makes this whole BRRRR strategy a little bit more difficult. Any questions around that during the due diligence period? We're gonna get to your question here in a second, Amanda. All right. So this is the deal we're going to be looking at today. This is a property I closed on Friday. The location was really great. 302 George Road. It's in South Effingham area. So I think all of you are local, so you know that area. It's actually off Highway 80. There's a private road, dead end road. It's got all these really beautiful houses called George Road. Maybe some of you know where it is. Maybe some of you don't. This one's all the way at the very end near a cul-de-sac. It's a big, almost 1.2 acre property. And there's a couple of things that stood out with it for me. And these are going to be the creative things. So Amanda, you asked about, like, you know, we buy this property, we got to put 20% down and the rents just aren't really there. So I want to look at ways to get the rents up. So this one particularly has two things that really get me excited when I look for a rental property. If I have a carport that's already got a concrete slab, or even if it's even if it's up on a raised foundation, and if it's got a roof underneath it, over the top of it. The reason this gets me excited is because if I convert this space into heated and cooled space, I'm adding value to this property. That carport maybe gives me $3,000 to $5,000 on an appraisal, but if I can convert that 400 or so square footage into a master suite with a nice, beautiful master bathroom, now all of a sudden it's probably going to bring me, you know, even at $200 a square foot or $180 a square foot, like somewhere between $60,000 to $80,000 in value. And so you can see how, you know, from a $3,000 to $5,000 value to a $60,000 to $80,000 value, that's really important. Now, the reason I really like
That's brilliant.
Say that again.
That's brilliant. That's really smart.
Well, and you can do this with garages too. But the reason I really like carports is because they've already got the roof overhead. You've already got the foundation, and that's a huge cost expense you're not having to spend. So for me to convert this into a nice, beautiful master suite, I'm probably going to spend somewhere around 40 to 50, right? Like of hiring everyone else out to do it. And I can usually expect to get somewhere, I would probably think it's probably going to be about an $80,000 value, 70 to $80,000 value. So I'm adding about 20 to 30,000 probably of value to this property. And then on the rental side, this house currently is a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath. And so by doing this, I'm actually making it a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, which is way more attractive from a rental. So it goes from like right now into this, in this market, this house would rent for like $1,650, $1,675, to adding that whole space right there. I'm probably closer to $2,200, $2,300 a month on my rent. And part of that is because of the location. It's just super convenient. It's 10 minutes from Pooler, but it's still South Effingham. So, you know, location, what do people say? Location, 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 right? The other thing, and this is probably my favorite thing in the world, is this thing. So this is like the thing that really got me excited. This lady, these people that lived here for 32 years, and she used to cut hair. And this building was where she had her little beauty salon. And I'm going to show you a video in a second of the inside of the main house and a video of this, but essentially inside this is a bathroom. It's got then it's just kind of an open little living room area where she would cut hair, and then she had like a little office area or something. But it's got electricity and it's got plumbing already, which is huge. Like, so what my plan is I'm going to spend about 40 to 45,000 converting this whole thing into a 600 square feet micro apartment. It's going to be a 1-bedroom, 1 bath with a living room, kitchen, and the rent on that probably right now is somewhere around $1,000 a month, $950 to $1,000 a month, just because there's nothing available. Not only that, but it's got a garage. It's got a whole little garage area. It's got a carport, and the way this property is designed, on the left side here, I can basically create a gravel driveway. So it's got its own private driveway. And if I want to, I can put a privacy fence between these and basically treat these like 2 separate rentals. So if I do both of those things, what I'm basically looking at, the ARV, I'm purchasing this for $225. The ARV that the bank gave me was $430 on the value on this. And I'm looking at about $100,000 to renovate. So all in all, with holding costs and closing costs, I'm probably going to be about $335 to $340 into this thing. And then my ARV is $430, which I haven't done the math on, but I think it's at least 80%, 75 to 80% should be somewhere around there. So I should be able to pull almost all of my money back out on this thing. And as far as the loan, maybe one of you can do a quick math on, you know, where rates are, but I'll be getting $1,000 for this, and I'd be getting about $2,200 to $2,300 on the main house. I'm getting about $3,200 to $3,300 in rent. So I'm hitting the 1% rule. If I'm all in for $330, $340, like I'm basically hitting the 1% rule on that, which means this thing will cash flow. It'll cash flow really great. And then I'm pulling all that money back out to fund the next deal. But looking at this, like if you just went up to this $225,000 purchase price and you thought you could get $1,600, $1,700 a month for rent, like it's not a deal. You've got to make sure you've kind of got those creative things in your tool belt so you can start looking for those things. And the fact that this, you know, this whole separate ADU, now pretend that ADU wasn't there and I just had this property. If I got it for the right price, it still could be a good deal because I'm looking at the property size. I think in Effingham, and it might vary based on county and city, but your mother-in-law suite has to be 50% or less of the square footage of your main house. So, and then you've got to have certain setbacks and you've got to have certain amount of property, you know, to coverage, but there's a whole zoning stuff. But ADUs, additional dwelling units, mother-in-law suites, like these things are super valuable. Another strategy that I could do with something like this, I'm not going to employ this strategy because I'm not sure it's in the best location for this. But if, let's say I had a tenant in the main house, I could also furnish this little micro apartment and rent it out as an Airbnb or rent it out as a furnished rental and then increase the cash flow even more. So there's various strategies that you can do there to get your numbers where you need them. Any questions around that? All right.
So you don't have to subdivide the property in order to rent 2 separate spaces on it, do you? Very cool. Okay.
No, the only thing that I'll run into with something like this is it's on a well, so there is no water bill. The only thing you would typically run into is your metering for your utilities. And so the electricity is all 1 meter. Now I'm going to look and see if it's possible for me to sub-meter and put a meter on that unit so that I can have 2 separate electric bills and let the tenants pay them. But there could be a scenario where I am actually the utility supplier for the electricity, and then I'm billing it back to my tenants based on a proration of the square footage or something like that. That, you know, it's just one more step you have to do, and you got to be very clear up front, like, hey, you know, like this is your, or you can do a flat fee. You know, you can look at the last 12 months and say, okay, well, what's it averaged, and do a flat fee. But there's a chance you could maybe be on the losing end of that. You always want to make sure your tenants are responsible for their utility usage, because they will open up windows and they'll have the AC blasting and because they don't care if they're not in charge of it. But trust me, they're going around telling their kids to turn off the lights if they're having to pay it. But yeah, no, you don't need to. And I don't ask, I mean, I don't get permission on these things, but I've never had an issue with anyone saying anything. You do need to be like, if you're in an HOA, if you're in an HOA or somewhere where you've got watching eyes and stuff, you want to be a little careful with stuff like that, because someone can maybe report you, because it is technically a single family dwelling unit. So, but I've never had an issue, never heard anybody having an issue.
Okay, cool.
All right, renovate. So, you know, going back to what I was saying about Dave and Caitlin, like they've built a really good relationship with a local contractor. And this is so important. Like, you know, contractors are like anyone else. They want to do business with people they like. They want to do business with people who are actually doing business. They don't want to be just driving around job sites, you know, never getting a job from you. But, you know, I always just tell my friends or people I'm working with, like, connect yourself to someone who's doing something. They'll introduce you. I've got great contractors I work with. We mostly sub everything out ourselves. But you know, there's definitely contractors in the area who are happy to go and bid some jobs for you, especially if you've got a mutual friend connection that you can say, hey, Josh has vetted this, it looks like a good deal. And especially if you have it under contract. Like if you have something under contract, you've actually got control of the property, you're not just wasting their time. But definitely important to be networking with contractors. And this is important too. You don't need to be an expert. I just listened to a recent Bigger Pockets episode, and it had the guy, you know, the guy and his wife, ex-wife, that used to do Flip or Flop, and the pretty couple. I don't know what their names are, but he's got a weird name, like starts with a T or Tarek or something like that. But he made this comment. He said, look, I still, after all these hundreds and hundreds of flips he's done, he's like, I don't really know much about construction. And I thought that was interesting, because I try to know way too much about a lot of this stuff. And it's important to know some, right? Like you want to know, like, you're not getting ripped off. But if you have a really good contractor, then, and someone you trust and is a value part of your team, like you don't need to be an expert at construction, especially not, at least not in the beginning. You need to really be focusing on that very first thing. If you can find deals, you can find good contractors, or even if it's an expensive contractor, if it's a good enough deal, the numbers might still work for you. You can also find the money, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But your highest and best use is networking and finding a deal. That's the thing that's going to get you started down this path. But as far as the construction goes, like I'm going to pause this slideshow because I want to share some of the videos. I want to dive into that, this deal that we're looking at again. Let me stop the share. All right. So we're going to look at this because while we're talking about the construction. So this is the main house. I'm not going to play this. I can't stand to hear myself talk. So walking in the carport area, this goes into a laundry area. And then from here, there is a utility area. Right now, he was using it as a freezer. Now, this is a space, when I convert this carport, what you're looking at directly is probably going to be the new side entrance to the house. So we'll have a little sidewalk going around the corner. There'll be a door right there where those cabinets are. And that'll come through a mud room where you'll have a drop space. And then it'll go to the laundry room. And then it'll go into the kitchen where we're talking about. And then the entrance that we just came into will actually go into your master bedroom, master suite with a closet, bathroom, and all that. That makes sense for everybody? And the reason for that is I needed a side entrance door for someone to come in through. So we're going to go through here. So that door to the right will go to the master suite. And then through here, we'll go into the kitchen. The other thing that made this deal really attractive is like most everything else had been renovated. It all was in really good shape. So if I play this video, this kitchen has been updated. It's not a huge living room and dining room kitchen space, but it all was in really good shape. And so I knew that that was not money I was going to have to spend. If I was going to have to renovate the kitchen and do all that as well, like this, I was going to have to get it for definitely more of a discount for sure. But this is the living room area. Going back into the hallway, this is the one full bath. We're not really going to have to touch it much. And then you have bedroom 1, bedroom 2, and then this is the master. I'll let this play. So right now it's a half bath. Here's the other thing that I'm probably going to do with this property is I'm probably going to make it into a 4-bedroom, 3-bath. So instead of this being a half bath, I'm actually going to convert this to an actual ensuite. And so you'll see me in a second, I open up this closet door because the thing I'm looking for is like, can I get a shower in there? It's massive. I'm like, yeah, I can get a huge walk-in shower there. So, you know, that's the things I'm checking on. So cutting concrete, putting in a shower, and then having to build out a closet somewhere else within the room is really easy and pretty inexpensive to do. And then the other thing that sold me on this property was this backyard space. It was just a beautiful covered back patio. The yard was really great. And I knew that it was private enough, even with that mother-in-law suite way over there in the distance, that I could have 2 renters here that were not going to be hurting each other's quiet enjoyment space, right? Because that's the other thing you want to be careful about. It's not a duplex. You don't have people shared walls right up next to each other. Like these are 2 separate families, and they don't even have to ever talk to each other if they don't want to. All right, so this is the mother-in-law suite space. So like I said, this is just one big room in here. Over in this corner is a half bath. And then this was like a little office desk space that she used. And then behind this wall, we'll see that in the next video, is, I mean, it's like another, I think it's like another 15 by 20 foot space or 15 by 15 space. That's where the master bedroom will be. Right now it's part of his shop. But all this is going to get gutted down to the studs. I'm going to make this into a really beautiful bathroom that'll be shareable. I have an entrance from the master bedroom and also an entrance from this common space for your guests. And then there'll be a small little kitchenette. It doesn't have to be anything massive. It's just a micro apartment. So it doesn't have to be anything crazy. So he's talking. This guy was super nice, by the way, too. Oh, and I didn't say this. I recorded this video in October of 2021. I just closed on this property Friday. This thing took me almost a year to negotiate and buy this thing, which is just crazy when I think about it. And that's a whole story in and of itself. All right, is this gonna play? Yeah, here we go. All right. All right, so this is the carport. It's going to load. And then this back over here, is it going to play? Here we go. This space over here, if you can see my cursor, is the whole master, where the master bedroom will be. This whole space in here. Of course, it's all cleaned out now. Another thing that just kind of popped in my head is you may look at this space too and say, well, why don't you expand more? Why don't you make it even bigger? And there's a little bit of a kind of a, there's almost like a, I would say there's like a threshold. Like you don't want to overspend because you're going to not reap all that back. Right. So I wouldn't want to make this into a 1,500 square foot mother-in-law suite, for example. Like it's just, I'm not going to get the ARV because every square footage in this mother-in-law suite is probably going to be considered on an appraisal about 40 to 50% of what the square footage of that main house is. So if I'm selling that main house at $180 or $200 a square foot, I'm probably only getting a value of about 100 to 110, maybe 90 to 110 on a mother-in-law suite. So it's typically about a 50% loss you have. So usually it's not going to benefit you to come in and just do it up to the nines and make it a 3-bedroom, 2-bath or something crazy like that. All right. Rent. This is pretty quick. Basically, like you should know these going in. You should kind of have an idea of what your rental numbers should be. The one thing I would say there is obviously like you want to know about your leases and you want to know the process of how do you market a property for rent. But honestly, that step is way laid down the road. Like if you guys get start on these step 1 and 2, trust me, we'll already be talking about this step and I'll be able to guide you. But you can do one of two things. You can hire a property management company to handle it all, in which case you don't need to be the expert. Obviously there's fees involved, and then also you can do it yourself. I always usually suggest people try to tackle it themselves in the beginning to learn some mistakes, make some mistakes, and then also just learn a little bit. Maybe you'll appreciate a property manager a little bit better. But certainly if you're looking to not create another job for yourself, like employing a property manager is really smart. Now on the refinance, my buddy that called me this week, he said, "Hey, I got this deal in Pembroke." He started describing it and I was like, "Yeah, it sounds like it could be a deal." And he said, "Man, but my problem is like, I'm just not financially in a position to purchase this thing. And I'm really not sure on the refinance, like even if I could get hard money." And by the way, asterisk, hard money is going to look more at the deal itself than at your own personal credit history and all that. So buying a good deal, if it's a really good deal, as long as you've got some cash or a partner with cash, like you can usually close a deal, even if maybe your credit's not great or maybe your debt to income isn't going to put you where you need to be. And so that's where he was at. He knew he could probably get some private money or some hard money, but on the refinance, he's like, "Man, I just don't know how I can do it." And so this is what I told him. I said, "Well, at least one of two things you can do. You can bring in a partner who is credit worthy, who can help you keep and hold on to the deal, or you can employ another exit strategy. Maybe you get it under contract and you wholesale it to somebody. You make a quick 10 or 15,000, you save that and you keep doing that a couple of times, and now you're ready for your first BRRRR. Or you flip it. Like you can sell it if your ARV is solid. I'm not a fan of flipping, but I understand that people are at a different place financially and they might need to flip 2 before they BRRRR 1. And that's okay. You just need to, I want to see people go down this path of where they are holding. The thing that I get upset with people is all they do is flip. And, they've done 20 flips and they have no rental properties. I'm just like, man, you're just spinning your wheels. Like you're selling the golden goose, and you need to be keeping, it so it can keep producing you golden eggs. So, but as far as the refinance process goes, if you have good credit and you're looking to do a cash out refi, so take this property that I'm purchasing, for example. I already have a tenant moving in on Wednesday for the main house. And then he's actually someone I know. So I've told him, I said, "Hey, I'm going to be renovating this carport while you're living there." So he knows it's going to be a little bit of noise, but he also knows that it's going to be better for his family in a few months once that's done, and it will up his rent. But, I can't refinance this thing for 6 months because there's a seasoning period. I'm also not in a position to get a normal Fannie Mae mortgage. I have 25 properties and I can't get a normal mortgage that most of you can. So I have to do what's called I think it's a DSCR loan. I can't remember the acronym exactly, but basically like I'll need to have this property in an LLC, and it's more of like an investor deal loan that looks at the deal. The rate's going to be a little bit higher, less attractive, but I know there's cash flow is going to be okay on it. But you usually almost always have to wait that 6-month seasoning period. So once you do that, assuming you guys have good credit, you don't own a lot of real estate yet, and you can get approved, like this would be a normal process. Like you were going to refinance your primary house. You would go to the bank. You tell them you want to do a cash out refinance. and they're going to look at that ARV. If you already have an appraisal from the construction loan, like I have, I'm going to give that to the new appraiser and say, hey, that just so you know, like this is what they appraised it for subject to. I'd love, hopefully it comes in even higher, but you know, blah, 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 blah. And then at the closing table, as long as my numbers work, like I'm going to get all that money back that I put as a down payment. And then I'm gonna just take that and redo it again. So like realistically, like you don't have to buy 10 properties a year. Like even if you're just doing, if you do this once every 6 months or once every 8 months, like you are going to be phenomenally wealthy one day. It doesn't take, even if you did it once every 2 years, if you're young, like this is an incredible way to build wealth. And you take this property that I just showed you today, once it's all done, it's going to be, let's say it's bringing conservatively, let's say we're bringing $3,000 a month in. When that property is paid for in 30 years, 25 years, our rent's going to be more expensive then? Absolutely. Let's say it's bringing $4,000 a month in. How many $4,000 a month paid for rental properties do you need to retire? Like I can tell you, like if you just had 2 of those, like that's a pretty cool retirement. I'm assuming you're going to have other things too. So you don't have to have a ton of these. And the goal is always kind of looking forward future, delaying pleasure, taking this money, rolling it back into more rentals and growing the portfolio. You know, there's a whole school of thought of like debt and comfortability around that. So I want to be sensitive to that. Some of you may be less comfortable with debt. That's okay too. Like buy one of these and then focus on paying it off if that's your goal. Maybe you want to pay it off in 10 years or 15 years. That's great. Like go for it. Like whatever makes you comfortable. But you know, just that one example is going to show you like you don't have to have 100 properties to retire comfortably. Like this can be something like if you just have a couple, like it's great. So, but my guess is if you go down this path, like you won't stop with 1 or 2. Like you'll continue to go on. All right, so yeah, go ahead.
Move on from refinance. Is there any issues with not being an owner occupant when you go to refinance? You are actively renting the house out at that time of refinance. Does that become a problem?
Nope. So the biggest difference is you're going to have a little bit different rate sheet you're going to go by. It's going to be a higher rate, typically at least 3/4 of a point higher than what owner occupied is going to be able to get. You also, depending on who is doing your refinance, you might, there are different banks handle this differently. Some will want to see 2 years worth of rental income before they can count that rental income towards against your debt to income. So that can be detrimental, right? So you want to find a lender who will take that current lease, that current rent, and use it as income for you after 6 months, because otherwise, like you got to make sure you're a high income earner to be able to do this. The other thing is you're not going to be able to cash out refinance like 90% or 95%. Like you're going to be capped at 80%, but really the rates get more favorable if you're 75% or below. So I always try to hit the 75%. Sometimes it ends up being 80. But that's really the biggest differences for you. Any other questions around that?
Nope, thank you.
All right, so the next step is to repeat it. Now, all that sounds really easy, right? Like it's real simple. We can go buy get free houses. It is. I mean, the process is simple, but it starts with a deal, right? So like that really is where it starts. And I promise you, like there are people in this group who have done this. I'm one of them. Like if you find something, if you come across that your Aunt Susie's cousin, Lori, her husband just died and she does not want to keep this house and she wants to sell it, but it needs a lot of work because Lori was a little bit of a hoarder. Like you find out about that, inquire about it. And I'm not trying to be insensitive to, in a situation like that, but like you can come in and help somebody. You can actually say, hey, I'll buy this house as is. Like, you come and take a look at it. Like these are the things that as you're talking to people are hearing, like you're looking for the yellow beetle bugs on the road. And I promise you, like once you are intentionally looking for yellow beetle bugs, you will see them everywhere. And so, and that's kind of where my mind is now. Like I see deals, I'll see, and I'll be like, oh, that looks like a deal. And so you just got to be prepared for that. The other thing I want to talk about is some other creative things, because my favorite thing with all this is like you have to see the things that other people aren't seeing. So I want to talk about a couple more creative things that I've done that creates value for properties. And there's really two main ones. So just similar to the carport conversion situation, you don't want to limit yourself to just carports and garages. You also want to think like, is there other square footage in this house that could be converted? I have a house in Guyton that I bought, and upstairs it had this, you pull down this ladder attic, you go up this ladder attic, and there was like this massive vaulted ceiling in the attic, and it was probably 450 square feet. And we racked our brains with trying to buy this property. We're like, man, how can we get to this space? There was just nowhere we could figure out functionally in this house that we were going to be able to get from the downstairs story up to that space, because we knew there was value to be found there. We just could not figure it out. So we ended up negotiating this house, assuming, well, it's just going to be a big attic space. There's nothing we can do about it. It wasn't going to be heated and cooled. So we ended up negotiating this house. It was actually on the MLS last year. We put in an offer right away. We didn't get it. 30 days later, it was still in the market. We put in the same offer 30 days later. We didn't get it. 30 days later, we put in the same offer again. And they finally acquiesced and got it. It was like 40,000 under asking. And so similar to this one, it didn't take a year to negotiate, but it took three or 4 months. So we finally got it under contract. Once we closed, we're in the house, we're doing our demo. A lady next door comes over and introduces herself, and she says, "Hey, y'all, my name's Peggy, and I'm an interior designer. I was trying to buy this house, but I just couldn't get them to negotiate where I needed it to be." And I was like, "Oh, really?" She's like, "Yeah." She's like, "Can I share with you what I was going to do?" I was like, "Yeah, that's awesome." So she starts walking through the house, and then she points at this corner where you could never fit like an actual staircase in. She says, "I was going to open up the ceiling there and put a spiral staircase in right here." And like my partner and I both just looked at each other like light bulbs went off. Like, we just didn't realize, like, we didn't have that in our tool belt to even think like spiral staircase, duh, dummies, like, and it was literally like she handed us an $80,000 gift, because now all of a sudden we're converting this space. We added a bedroom, a bathroom, and a loft. And, this is an $80,000, $85,000 upgrade to this house that probably cost us maybe $25,000 to do, maybe, $30,000 to do. And so it just was an amazing value add. Like, that's the kind of stuff of adding value. Another example, and this was another thing that we didn't really see in the very beginning as an option, but as we explored it, we found it to be more. Let me see if I can actually pull it up. I'm gonna pull this up real quick. Hold on. Let's go back to this. I'm gonna give you the visual. 740. All right, so this is a property that we bought, 740 Goshen Road. Let me change it to the satellite. So we bought this house, and this is the little house. This is Goshen Road, if you're familiar, and this is little Pittman Drive. So the property went all the way down here along this fence line, came all the way back over here, and came around. And there was a well. Can y'all see my cursor? I'm assuming you can see my cursor.
Yes.
So right in here, there was a well that serviced the property. This property has like a septic tank system here. And so we're like, gosh, this is a great rental. It's a great location. We were renovating the whole property. We bought this property for $155. But we're like, gosh, like, it's got this huge space back here. We're like, a tenant is going to have to cut that grass. You think a tenant is going to keep up with cutting a 1.85 acre lot? Like, no way. So we started doing some research, and we discovered that the main water county lines run along Goshen Road right here. So we called the county and we said, hey, we started asking questions like, how can we subdivide a lot? They said, well, you can only subdivide a lot under 1 acre if it's fed with county water. And we had a 1.85 acre lot. So we couldn't just do it in 2 1 acre lots. So we had a problem. We had to connect the house to the water. So we discovered that the water line did run across there, and we spent about $3,500 with plumbing and tap fees and everything else. And we connected the house. We disconnected it from the well. We connected it to the main water, and we had a survey done. The survey cost us $500, and we had this lot redrawn. We made this house up here. It was like a 0.6 acre lot, and then this was a 1.2 acre lot. An interesting thing of what we did is we've got about $4,000 invested in this whole process, and then we sold this 1.2 acre lot with a deep well. We sold it for $75,000. Now, the interesting thing about that is, so 155 plus the $4,000 minus 75, like we basically got this house for like, what is that, like $85,000, which is great. I mean, it's like an incredible deal. The really interesting thing that we learned through this process too was that 75,000 will actually end up being tax-free. So that was basically not a taxable event for us, because what we did is, typically when you buy real estate, you want value in your land to be really low. This is a tax lesson for you. I'm not a tax guy, not a CPA, but you want your value in your land to be low, and you want your value in the property, the improvement, the building, to be high, because that is what can be depreciated. You can't depreciate your land. And so, but what we did was we actually put the value on that $155,000 purchase. We actually put the value of the land about $90,000. And so that when we sold that $75,000, it basically, we sold it so quick after closing that it was like, there wasn't actually capital gains to be made, if that makes sense. So now all of a sudden we have an $85,000 property we purchased. The value of the land is $15,000. The improvements is $70,000 is what it looks like in front of the IRS. So that was a really cool lesson. That was another creative thing. So if you come across a house that maybe it's not the numbers you're looking for, but if it's got a big piece of property, like knowing how the county handles rezoning and things like that is so important, because that property alone was worth more to sell it off than to keep it all 1.85 acres as a rental, because I can guarantee you that extra 1.2 acres wasn't going to get us much more in rent. So it just didn't make sense. So that was another fun, creative thing that we found, just things that you're looking for, because that's how you're going to get ahead in this, is you got to find creative solutions. So, all right, we're running out of time. Anybody have any questions? I feel it was a crash course a little bit. Hopefully somebody learned something.
I got another question for you, Josh. I'll make it fast.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, let's say you got somebody that has like $35,000 and they got to cover, minimum down payment if they're able to qualify for a good loan, like a 3% down, and they have the remainder, I don't know, $20,000 for renovations and a holding cost is small budget like that.
All right. So let's stop for a second. So on your purchase, Amanda, unless you're going to live in the property and you're treating it like a house hack or a house flip or something like that, you're going to need 20% down to purchase the property.
Right.
As an investment property. Now, I love Bank of Newington for this. If I'm going to be doing a heavy renovation, I love Bank of Newington because it's 20% down with the purchase price. And then they are going to lend me all the renovation costs. They're going to give that to me as a line of credit. So if you've got the cash to do the down payment, that's great. Do it. The deal that I went through today in depth, the 302 George Road. So I used Bank of Newington for the 80% purchase. And then I actually had a private money lender who brought the $45,000 down payment. And I have given them a return on that money. They have a second position mortgage on the property. So like I purchased that without any money of my own pocket. And now I've got a $130,000 line of credit that Bank of Newington has got sitting there for me to do all my renovation costs. So the only thing I have to cover is the 6.5% interest only loan, and which ends up being about $1,000 a month. But I actually have a tenant moving in Wednesday that's paying me $1,700 a month for that main house without the garage conversion yet. So like I'm going to be cash flowing day one at $700 a month before I've even started renovating at all. So, so I would say like, just know, like, you don't have to be the person bringing the money in the beginning. If you've got the money, it's probably important because you don't have the credibility. But I'll repeat this again. Like, it goes back to, if you have a good enough deal, you can always fund it. There's finding and there's funding. If you can find deals, you said earlier, you said we've had a hard time finding deals. you're not alone there, but finding good deals, if you can find a good enough deal, do you think you can find the money, somebody to come in and partner with you to fund it? Absolutely. Yeah, you can. So you've got to focus on finding deals. Caitlin and Dave just, what is it? White Pine Properties or something you guys are doing? It's
White
called.
Pine.
Say it again.
White Pine Homes.
Okay, so they posted on Facebook. I think you guys posted on Facebook, like you're paying like a bird dog fee or something, right?
Yep. Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah. So, they're basically saying, hey, if anybody knows of a deal, we'll pay you a bird dog fee to find it. Now, Caitlin, just side note between us, be careful about that. As a licensed agent, you actually can't pay that. So make sure you're doing this through Dave, okay?
All the
Yeah, so be careful about that. See, us licensed agents, we have to be careful because there's things that we're limited, we can't do. But that's not to say you can't like hook somebody up if they bring you a deal, like, hey, I just want to give you a gift, like just really thankful for you connecting, so whatever. So to answer your question, if somebody's got $35,000 down, 35,000, and they're buying a property that's 160,000 and it's going to need a reno, they've got enough money to put the down payment down, and then the bank's going to give them the loan, as long as that ARV is hitting the numbers where they need it to be.
Very cool. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? What is a typical bird dog fee? Kim asked. Who is Kim? Who are you? What's your last name? Which Kim is this? She asked what is a typical bird dog fee. Probably, it can be anywhere from 500 to 1,000. If somebody's wholesaling, it can be a lot. But Caitlin, what are you guys offering? 500 to 1,000, probably.
We did 500. Yeah, we went back and forth on if we were gonna do 500 or 1,000, but with this being our second deal, like we're just trying to be more conservative on that front.
Yeah. So, and it depends. Like if there's a lot of really juicy meat on the bone, like maybe you hook your person up, like I'm a pretty generous person when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like I'd like to take care of people because they remember it, and trust me, they will bring you back more deals if you feel like they were taken care of. But yeah, 500 to 1,000 typically.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right, well, here's my challenge, my call to action for all of you. If you're not out telling people, hey, I'm looking for a deal, you're never going to go down this path. Like if this is something you really want to do, and it just starts with one deal, like your goal doesn't need to be 10 or 100, like it just needs to be that next deal. And so it's just that next shot. You got to get it. If you ever come across something and you're like, hey, I got something and you need help closing it. I had some people I knew, they had what they thought was a deal. I went out and met them. I helped them negotiate a price on it. I told them, hey, don't pay more than this. Like I did all that for free. Like I really legit love this. There may be opportunities where somebody turns into clients later, but like really that's not why I'm doing this. Like it's something I'm super passionate about. I want to share it with people. I want to see people be able to fund their retirement one day, fund their kids' college one day, like fund their daughter's weddings. I'm a dodo. I got 3 girls. I got to pay for 3 weddings one day, hopefully, Lord willing. And so like, I want to see people be able to fund those things. So that's really my mission with this. So you can literally always text me. If you don't have my number, I'm going to type it in the chat box here. You can always text me. If I don't text back right away, it's because I'm busy, but I promise I'll text back. And I'm always a resource for you. And honestly, like Caitlin and Dave, I'm sure they would invite you to text them and message them. Amanda's done a lot of deals, done some live-in flips herself. Heather, my sister, we helped her find an off-market house whenever she bought her place, and she's got a ton of equity. And Quinny, another example, like they've got a great property they bought. So like, all these people, like if you own a house, like you've got experience, what it takes to fix a toilet, you know what these things take. And so to me, this is the best investing path you can go down, far better than, like, I don't know anything about stocks. I don't know how to make Apple worth more tomorrow than it is today, but we all know stuff about houses. We all live in houses. Even if you're not owning a house, you live in one. So This isn't as foreign as you think, and just having all these tools in your tool belt, I'm telling you, you can be successful in it. And my example today shows you, like, you don't have to have 10 of these. You can just have 1 or 2 and it can be enough. So thank you all for joining. Hopefully this was helpful. And hopefully you if you're not part of my Facebook group, Amanda, I don't think you were. I shared this on my actual Facebook page, but I have like a coaching Facebook group. So if you want to join there, that's where these meetings are posted typically. Please let me know, to message me privately, and I'll invite you to it. So thank you all.
Thanks,
Thank
Josh.
you.
Take care, y'all.
Thanks, Josh, so much. This is so awesome what you're doing. I love watching you succeed at this. This is fabulous.
All right. Thanks all. See ya.
Bye-bye.